Hi everybody, in this video I will be taking a look back on the Reysaş companies, the history, why I am still invested in them, and the future. So, I originally invested in Reysaş at 2021, but since I've started the channel in 22, I will be taking it from there. Reysaş is originally a Mohnish Pabrai clone. I am ashamed to say that I would definitely miss this opportunity if he had not invested in the company first. Mohnish realized that Turkish stocks were screening so cheap, so Mohnish, and this dates back to like 2019, bought a third of Reysaş for around $8 million. Given the fact that it was at one point a $1 billion market cap company, I would say that this was a great investment. But the thing with Reysaş is that it is a compounder. When you invest your capital at high teens and in most cases over 20% returns, the company grows like a weed. For those who don't know, Reysaş has two tickers. One is the REIT with the ownership of the real estate, and the other is the logistics with a 62% ownership in the REIT. Logistics also does, well, logistics and some other smaller businesses. I originally invested in 2021 and 2022, but honestly, I just kept buying more every year since, and it is a combined 80% position for me currently. I never sold a share other than trading from one ticker to another. So here are the charts, starting with the REIT. First of all, these charts are in USD basis, so the returns that I'm talking about here are all based in USD. The charts start from late 2021, which is where I originally started buying. RYSAS RYGYO, which is the REIT, went from 5 cents to currently 48 cents, but at one time it was above 60 cents per share. So currently it is roughly a 10 bagger in around 4 years. And now here is the chart of the logistics. As you can see, it went from even under 5 cents to at one point 65 cents per share. So it was more than a 13 bagger. But currently, with this recent drawdown, it is down at 33 cents per share. And here is the 1-year graph for 2025, where it is basically down 50% in USD terms. Which reminds me of a Charlie Munger quote where he said that if you can't stomach a 50% drawdown as an investor, you deserve the mediocre result you are going to get. Before we get to the nitty-gritty of the business, here are my trades between the tickers. Yellow line is logistics and the blue line is the REIT. In the area that I marked as 1 with the red is where I sold most of my logistics shares to buy the REIT. Because while I thought both were undervalued, the REIT was undervalued even more. And being a Turkish citizen, I had no tax obligations on my gains. So I sold my logistics shares to buy the REIT. In the area that I marked as 2 with the purple line is where I reversed these trades. I sold my REIT shares to buy the logistics shares because this time I thought the logistics was more undervalued compared to the REIT. Also, here are my tweets for those trades with the dates. But before we get to the logistics, let's look at where most of the value lies, Reysaş RYGYO. So, Reysaş RYGYO's main business is operating warehouses. They buy land, build warehouses, and rent them to firms such as Mercedes, Toyota, IKEA, and local brands like Kiel and so forth. They are rolling all of their earnings back to their business to grow their portfolio of assets. They currently have around 1.6 million square meters of warehousing space, and most of it is in the Marmara region, where the rents are at the highest, especially in and around Istanbul. These warehouses need to be on the outer circle of the city, not too close to cause disturbance, but not too far that it takes a long time to get to the city. So, for example, they had a warehouse space in Sancaktepe, Istanbul, and the city just kept moving outwards, that the warehouse space was now pretty much within the city. So what they did is they tear down the warehouse and built residential projects there. So they are quite opportunistic in their approach. But the company has grown so much over the years. Here is a graph that I made that shows their portfolio valuations by a third party. The valuations were made in lira basis, but I translated them to the USD with respective rates. But I should also mention that the early years valuations were made very conservatively. So for example, Mohnish was saying that the company had $1 billion worth of assets and 200 million in debt when he invested in 2019. And as you can see, the valuations back then were so much below that. But I definitely think Mohnish was correct because I actually read the valuation reports and they were using figures much below than the market realities. The recent figures are somewhat closer to reality, despite still being lower. On my estimates, the current portfolio is worth around $2.5 to $3 billion, and as of the recording of this video, we still haven't gotten the 2025 year-end valuation reports, but the management expect them to be slightly over $2 billion. But what's more important is that the company is expecting the total square meters to get to 2.2 million, and around 400,000 square meters will be built in and around Istanbul area. Now, that is quite important. Istanbul region is where the rents are at highest. Now, I personally have my own data, but if you want to see a more formal data, here is Cushman & Wakefield's 2025 September figures for Istanbul. As you can see, the square meter per month rental price is shown as $11. So let's use that. With their addition of 400,000 square meters over the next 2 years at $11 per month, the annual additional income is going to be over $50 million. And the current rental income for 2025, in my opinion, is going to be slightly below $100 million. So what we have here is approximately 50% growth already baked in. Now obviously, there is going to be the cost of the building of these warehouses, but the returns on my estimations are mid to high teens with a very conservative approach. So roughly in 6 years, these warehouses are going to be paying themselves back, and all the rents from that point on is just going to be reinvested in similar projects. Now, if that's not the snowball compounding effect, I don't know what is. But I should also mention here that with the recent regulations, RYSAش RYGYO will need to start paying dividends starting this year. So if you're a dividend investor, it may be a good thing for you, but I would much rather if they could keep all of these profits in the company to reinvest in the company, similar to Berkshire and Amazon. But the dividends are likely not going to be so high, but this is the first year we will get them, so we will see about that. Before going over to the logistics side, I want to explain a couple more things. First, you may ask why the rents are so high in the area, and the first answer is the lack of warehousing and the increasing demand from secular tailwinds like the e-commerce and economic growth in the area and things like that. But the second is the lack of the space. When a company like Amazon wants a warehouse, they want the biggest one they can get, because the bigger the warehouse, the more efficiently you can operate it. So now, Reysaş is not trying to build 5 to 10,000 square meters of warehouses. They are trying to build 70,000, 100,000, 120,000. So the 400,000 square meters, for example, will be made up of just about 3 big warehouses. The costs get too high, and the more important reason is that when you want to build warehouses at over 100,000 square meters each, that eliminates just so much of the possible plots that you can find to do that in. For example, there was a recent privatization of a land, and Reysaş bought it for 2 billion liras in cash, because that plot was one where they could go build these giant warehouses. So the customers are more willing to pay up for the bigger ones. There are secular tailwinds and not many other players in the sector to compete. One final note I want to cover here is that Reysaş still hasn't gotten to the market prices from the warehouses they already have in their portfolio. The market prices of the rents are increasing, but since Reysaş already has renters occupying the warehouses they have with the contracts that are now below the market prices, it takes time before they can get to the market prices. So there is still growth that will come from the renewal of these old contracts at market prices. And imagine you are an international firm, say Amazon for example, or any other firm. Once the contract ends and you don't want to renew, and say that you are occupying a warehouse with 100,000 square meters, where are you going to go? These warehouses are in so high demand that they are rented out before they are even built. Are you going to call the headquarters in your country and ask them to build you a warehouse in Istanbul with a 100,000 square meter capacity? If not, where are you going to store your goods? Are you going to put them on the street? So the pricing power here that Reysaş has is huge. Now, that said, why am I invested more in the logistics? First of all, I still have a huge ownership in the REIT through the logistics. The CEO, Durmuş Döven, also owns only logistics. Heavy majority of Mohnish's shares are also in the logistics as well. Since I have no tax obligation, I can in the future make similar moves again. It is all about the opportunity cost. I explained here on this tweet, but let me warn you that while the value of everything other than the REIT stake was 1.6 billion liras in this tweet, it is slightly over 3 billion liras as of this recording. But still, what you are getting is 7 billion in book value, which is likely undervalued, and 1 billion in operating profit for the first 9 months of 2025. So this is an image that I have made from the company's reporting. Here, you can see that EBIT is a little bit over billion, but the company also has almost equal amount of financing costs. It cannot create meaningful bottom line. However, this is also about to change, because Reysaş is raising capital from shareholders in both tickers. The funds that logistics will raise are going to amount to 2 billion liras and be used as 50% bond redemption that is going to come in February 2026, 25% for buying parking facilities, 15% for fleet expansion, they are buying 30 Mercedes and 30 Lora to transportation vehicles, and 10% is going to be the working capital. So here, we can assume that around 60% of the 2 billion is going to be used to repay the debt that the company has, which amounts to 1.2 billion liras. The bond payment that's going to happen had an interest rate of Turkish lira reference, which is the lira's reference rate, plus 3% interest. So at the time of the tweet, Turkish lira reference was at 40%, and I took 43% as the interest on that debt. After paying down a total of 1.2 billion with a 43% interest rate, that means 510 million liras saved annually from interest costs, and that will flow directly to the bottom line, assuming no further change. Let me remind you that you were paying 1.6 billion liras at the time of the tweet, and currently paying 3 billion liras for the logistics. Now, I know I have oversimplified things, but I don't believe in complex Excel models. I think investments should be easy to understand. So I believe the current prices are too cheap in both companies, but especially in the logistics side of Reysaş. On a side note, Egemen Döven just bought more shares at the end of 2025, which is always good to see. And this video has just been an update on the company company due to how cheap it got with the recent 50% drawdown. As Warren Buffett says, you want to buy companies when there is blood on the streets. If you want to access even more details, I cover the company way deeper on Patreon. With one subscription, you gain access to all of my posts, so I highly recommend checking that out. I don't make timely offers or any other type of deals there. There is just one monthly price that I set below the market, and you gain access to everything for 1 month. Cancel and resubscribe anytime you would like. The reason for that is I don't want to cross my current subscribers by giving discounts to the newcomers or cancellations. So yeah, definitely check that out if that interests you. If you like the video, as always, it helps to do YouTube things here, especially commenting, even if it's just a thank you or any type of feedback. That's it for today, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.